You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, welcome, and hope everybody out there is having a wonderful Sunday night, Sunday night. Hey, welcome to the Dangerous Liberty Podcast, and we have a great show for you tonight. We actually have two guests. One was kind of last minute, but I think he is a super welcome addition to that. On top of that, what I really want to do tonight is kind of just go back through all the different misinformation, all the different questions that some of you might have, inconsistencies, conspiracies. We're going to open up we're going to open up to everybody, and we're going to try to go through and clear as much of that up as possible. I think there are still every day in the feed, whether it's Twitter, whether it's comments on YouTube channel, I keep hearing things that have been addressed that have been completely debunked, and people still are being misled by those elements of it. And, I think it's important to clear that up. The truth is ultimately what matters. Folks, I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. Again, this is going to be a very chat-centric podcast tonight. But again, we will also prioritize super chats, and we will try to get to as many live chats as possible. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support us, we are offering memberships. And as always, look, disagreement is not only welcomed, it's encouraged. We want you, if I could get everybody that disagrees with me over in the chat, that'd be great. That way we can talk one-on-one with another. This is all about open discourse. I think that's important. That being said, we're not going to deal with name calling. If you're going to do that, the ad hominem stuff, we're just going to ban you. You're gone. You can go sit in your echo chamber, and you guys can talk to each other about how smart you all are. All right, folks. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring on both Tyler and the man known as Brick Suit. Hey, welcome, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Yep, glad to be here, Gary.
For those of you who don't know, Tyler McGettigan, did I say that name right, Tyler?
Yep.
Is actually an eyewitness. And this is one of the things that I've complained about many times over is if you're going to investigate any of this stuff, there's a couple of basic things that you need to do. Number one, get out of your chair and go do some things. Get to UVU. The other thing I think would make a lot of sense is you get out there and start talking to eyewitnesses. That's something that Candace has never done. I think she's talked to one eyewitness. And the other real important part of this is getting on different subject matter experts to talk about the case, to talk all the things that we've done that to me are just obvious ways, as opposed to just open up a tip line and being flooded with a bunch of nonsense. What I want you guys to do real quick is just kind of introduce yourself. And if you guys aren't following Brick Suit on X, make sure you go follow him. So Brick, if you will, just kind of tell everybody who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I'm an accidental social media presence here. I mean, I was really just an offline supporter of President Trump's, and I went to a rally in Pennsylvania, and I was wearing a suit that I had bought to signify my support of the border wall, which I don't have on now because I'm going to Turning Point next week, and all my suits are at the cleaners. But President called me up on stage, and I decided, well, if he calls you up on stage and you're wearing a brick suit, you become Brick Suit. So, I basically support border security is one of my absolute highest priority issues, along with First Amendment and Second Amendment, and generally will support America First candidates no matter where they're running.
That's awesome, man. No, thank you for what you do. You've been a real voice of reason out there, and you've done a lot of great work. Tyler, if you will, just kind of tell everybody who you are. And, I think what we'll end up doing is kind of starting this out with a quick your witness testimony of what you saw that day. And then maybe Brick and I will ask you some questions. And then I do want to address some real important, misinformation that's out there at a minimum. I think it's more disinformation. But go ahead, Tyler, take it away. Tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, I'm Tyler McGettigan. in terms of political stuff, I'm not terribly active in stuff other than like election methods and election systems. That's kind of my passion from an academic standpoint. And I guess related to what we're going on with Charlie Kirk, that's actually how I ended up there. About a week before Charlie's event at UVU, I saw a video with Charlie and Mike Lee talking about election politics here in Utah, and that near the end of that is when I saw the information about the event happening at UVU. And that's, that kind of motivated me to want to come and ask Charlie a question about related to election methods.
Awesome. So what time did you get there that day, Tyler?
Gosh, times. I can't remember I got there like about half an hour before the event.
Okay.
Because I figured, I wanted to have enough time to kind of get in line. I probably should have been more ambitious because I was near the back of the line. And so it was kind of ambiguous whether I would have even been able to make it up front. But,
so you were in line to ask him a question. I guess you already kind of went past screeners and all that good stuff.
Screeners. Okay, so that's okay. So that's one of those things that you probably are aware of, that there wasn't much in the way of security going into the event. It was just a matter of walking through the building into the central area where the event was, which to me was odd because I had, like, when I signed up for the event, they gave you a printout with a QR code. So I was like, oh well, I'm going to walk in and they're going to ask for the QR code to be like, okay, you signed up to be here, you're good. And there was nothing like this.
No, I'm talking about specifically on. I have heard from a few people that asked questions that day. They actually talked to somebody before they were allowed to get online, in line to actually ask him a question. Do you get that far? Or did any of that happen with you?
No, I did not get that far in the line. I think I was a little bit before that.
Gotcha. Okay. So
yeah, one thing
go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I heard too is that he said he heard about the event a week before, and then I've seen out there at times where people are saying this was all last minute. How'd they get this done in 2 or 3 days? And so I was aware of this event. I actually thought about driving up from San Diego to see it. I wasn't able to make it, but I knew about it in advance as well. And my recollection is probably something around that time frame, maybe even a little bit sooner than a week before.
Yeah, no, look, we debunked, number one, I debunked this in a video. We've talked about it, and we have some posts that talk about this on X as well. The first time that it was advertised was August 27th. That actually gave the exact location, the time. It was going to be in the UVU courtyard. That was August 27th. So this idea that it was only posted a couple days before is a complete farce. And on top of that, when I did post that, Candace Owens herself responded to my post, and I gave her the information. So this was back in, I believe, November 4th, and yet still here we are. The last video I did was from hers in December 1st, and she was still saying, oh, this was a last-minute thing. So that's a lie. That's intentional. On top of that, having talked to people there at UVU, there was people that knew about it at least as early as August 14th. So there was a lot of buzz about it around the campus. That information was out, and the idea that it was a last minute thing and that there wasn't much time to plan, which is really where we're going with this, is like Tyler couldn't have known about this. It had to come from insider information. It's another reason to say that Tyler wasn't the shooter, which is also just nonsense. And we keep seeing this types of lies and obfuscation and just disinformation being put out, and not just put out, repeated, even though when the record has been corrected with that. All right, so Tyler, you get there about 30 minutes prior to. One of the things I'm going to address tonight is about the incorrect statement of Frank Turek saying that there was drones. I want to address where that photo came from that people are pushing around that said that it was a drone shot. It wasn't, and I'll prove that tonight. But while you were there, did you see any drones flying prior to the event?
No, like if I'd seen a drone, I would remember, and I did not see a single drone anywhere near the event.
Awesome. All right, so I guess again, just kind of carry on with your story. Tell us kind of, you're standing there in line, you got there 30 minutes early, and then what else is going on while all that's happening?
Yeah, so I guess I should describe like what I kind of the setting and what I saw like when I first got there. I didn't know where the line was, so I kind of walked around a little bit around the back of the crowd in the main area, and I could see like on the left side of the stage. Well, from my view, it was to the right. There was like a group of LGBTQ protesters up top on the back balcony. So if you're familiar with how it's set up, there's this top balcony, and this is relevant to some of the stuff that I've been seeing today.
Yeah.
About theories about like, a second shooter and whatnot. So what they had was protesters to the event that were up there, and they had like a pride flag hung down on their side over there. But they had the whole balcony behind Charlie cordoned off with tape to separate the protesters from so that they couldn't get above the tent.
Right.
And they had police presence there. I saw at least one officer on the opposite side. So that would have been on the left side of the stage. If you're facing Charlie, you would have seen there was a cop at the top of the stairs there next to more tape. And there were people kind of by the stairs and next to him that were looking at the whole scene from above. So that's another thing, is those stairs that people are talking about, that was a vantage point people were using to kind of get a good view of the event. Any space that you could fill, people were going to get a good vantage point, because that's what people wanted. And so This is kind of, as I'm entering, what I'm seeing is a giant crowd, and every space that you could find that, like, if it's a good vantage point to look at the event, people are trying to fill.
Right.
Like, I didn't know that it was exactly like 3,000 people approximately, but I would have said like, yeah, it was at least 1,000 people there if you asked me to estimate while I was there.
Yeah, I was looking up some additional pictures, and I will pull them up, and then we can kind of fly around the 3D model. So I'm trying to see if I have some of what you're talking about, the balcony, and I will show that to people if I can find it, but we can definitely take a look at it on the 3D model. So the top,
it's really more like a rooftop than a balcony, like right behind the tent. It's kind of
it's like a bridge.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like a bridge over this exit area at the bottom.
And it's a walkway from the second floor of buildings to buildings. I was really like, all the stuff that you see, even when you pull up Google Earth, everything red is just a walkway to include, I mean, it's there's a huge walkway on the second floor, even going back to the roof that Tyler got on. There's a walkway that literally dead ends onto the roof access, and you just literally jump over the handrail, and now you're on the roof, which is pretty wild. Even when I got there, I was pretty amazed by that. So this is the area that you're talking about right there, right?
Yes, this is the area. And so on the right side of this image, you would have the LGBTQ protesters and their flag hanging off the side. I think you can still see the tape. And then on the opposite side, on the left side, you would have had some more tape, a police officer that was monitoring that area, and other attendees at the event on the stairs on the left. And so I guess part of the reason, like the discussion that we were having earlier about earlier on X about possible second shooter, That being the theory of like, oh, well, there could be a second shooter on this side. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't really. The first problem here is that there are people there in that area, and there's a police officer there. So, like, anyone that's going to engage in that kind of thing, like, there's already tremendous presence of people and eyes watching what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone isn't familiar, the area that you're kind of talking about that was roped off right here where it says interview location is where Adam Bartholomew, his video came from, and he was actually doing that interview right there. Now, I know other people have suggested over here on left to Charlie's right, our left on here where it says alternate location, that there was a shooter there, and we'll take a look at that from the model perspective in just a moment. But I do want to orient everybody. All of this red brick area, that's all walkway. And this is all second level walkways that you're looking at right there. And then we go back here. This right here in this spot is the location that allegedly Tyler Robinson took the shot from. And then what we have back here is how he got access to the roof. This is a walkway. It goes straight. The only thing that separates the roof right here is the same level as the walkway. There's just a guardrail right there that you can jump over. And what the charging documents indicate is that he actually jumped over. There's a little retaining wall here. It's a little wall. And the charging documents indicate that he did something behind there. We think he reassembled the rifle, put the stock back on the rifle. You use 2 screws to do that. It takes less than a minute to do it. And then when he was ready, he progressed and advanced from that position to his final firing position, which was right here. And we can take a look at some different videos and pictures and things like that to kind of show what was going on with that as well. So, where was the person that you were talking with? Were they suggesting that the second shooter or a different shooter?
They're suggesting the alternate location.
Okay, yeah.
Online, yeah.
And we'll take a look at that, and I'll show people because we actually have. Well, you know what? Let's just do it right now. I'll actually show people that from the model, you can tell that that is not even a viable spot. And we actually have those kind of pre-programmed in here. Let me pull this off here for just a second.
Tyler, while he's doing that, where were you actually when the shot occurred in relation to the stage?
I was about, so I was on the left side of the stage, so I would have been about 25 yards to the right of Charlie.
Okay.
All right. So basically, I'll pull this up here. All right. So let's see. This is service roof, campus gateway ledge. All right. So this is a spot. This is right on the balcony itself. Like, let me pull out of here for just a second. You guys can see what we're talking about. We just put it. This is where you had to move someone to get to a point to where they had a line of sight that we have right here. And this thing is super finicky. It's not even plausible that somebody would be there. From this spot right here, let me see if I can get, this one right here. Like, there is no line of sight, and there is absolutely no way. And this is what was being pushed, because this is a practical spot to shoot from, but there is no line of sight that makes it even possible. On top of this, the thing that's lost, and both of you have been there, so you can kind of talk about this. When I went there, I was shocked at how close everything actually is. It's so much closer in person. And the idea that somebody was going to shoot from this ledge or this other balcony over here just a little bit and not be seen or heard is it's preposterous. It really is.
Especially on this one, Gary, where you had so many people that would have been on the opposite side of the seating bowl looking in that direction. And that person might very well have been skylighted or silhouetted against the horizon. And so, you've got so many eyes that would be looking in that direction. So to be there and not be detected is highly unlikely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just, Yeah, and you did have. Well, I'll just leave it at that. It was, like you said, it's highly unlikely that anyone's not going to see you in that situation. Get you guys up here. All right, so Tyler, so anything else leading up to the moment the shot took place that you found peculiar or that you can remember? Anything important?
Well, there's a few things. So one notable thing is that the sound wasn't the sound system wasn't too great, or at least from where I was, it was difficult to hear the conversation on the microphone that was happening with Charlie. Part of it was that the crowd was being loud, but some of it was also the sound system itself. They were gradually figuring it out, and so it was shortly before the shot that they actually got the sound system figured out, and I was able to begin to hear the conversations that were happening. I guess that's the most, I don't know, the kind of the time and place, what was happening in terms of the event. That was my perspective on it. In line, I was just talking with people about questions that they had. And so behind me, there was a couple of vegans, and then the guy in front of me, he actually ended up being the guy that ran up to the stage and took a hat on video later. So that was a interesting thing to see.
All right, so now we have Hunter Kozak up there asking the final question. So he's there. Tell us from your perspective what happened.
Well, I was kind of peering in between people, trying to kind of, look at Charlie while I was listening to listening to the conversation. And, I hear Charlie give a response, put his mic down, and then there's just a pop. And it was, from my perspective, it was to my right and a ways off. It wasn't, to me, it didn't sound like a close shot, but it also wasn't a distant shot, right? It was kind of in this middle range where I could definitely, it was loud, but it was also a distance off. And so at that exact...
Let's kind of tighten that up just a little bit, because middle range is different from everybody. How far, when that shot went off, how far away would you estimate that gunshot to be?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not great at, I've shot firearms before, but I'm not great at placing firearm distances because I haven't been around a ton of firearms. So
Sure.
When it came to,
it's a lot different being downrange from the firearm as well. When it's
100%.
It's shooting in your general direction. Like when I was at Butler during President Trump's assassination attempt, I heard noises, but I didn't register them as gunshots because I'd never been downrange before. So, it's definitely a lot different.
I did immediately register it as a gunshot, though, because in part because I was looking at Charlie right when it happened, and so I did see. I had a side profile, and I did see his head jerk back,
right?
Which is not something that is a lot of the videos that are out don't really capture the immediate result of the impact. A lot of them are face on, and they're kind of focusing in on the argument of, well, that's the exit wound. But from a side view, it was pretty obvious that he'd been hit from the front, and especially with the combination of the sound, if you were in my position, there is no way that you would think that it came from any other direction than from in front of him, and that caused him to fall backwards. My initial thought, because I didn't have, after he fell and went back, first of all, I wasn't up close, so a lot of the details I didn't have, but I thought that he'd been shot in the head, which obviously turned out to be incorrect, but it was the jerking back of his head that made me think that.
All right. Real quick, Miller, man, I'm just going to give you one last warning. If you want to discuss 30-06 tonight, we can. If you're going to get over there and call people idiots and things like that, I'm going to ban you. We can either have an adult discussion or you can be banned. So last warning to everybody over there. I'm just telling you, if you want to have a discussion and you want to make your feelings known, all right, I know you got big feelings, and we will talk about all those stuff like adults. If you don't want to do that, and you want to throw around things like $7,000, Israel Zionist, you can go do that on Twitter, and we're just not going to play that game. All right. Sorry, Tyler. So it was obvious to you that he was hit from the front, and from your perspective, it looked like you thought initially that he was actually hit in the head.
Yeah. There was quite a bit, like, afterwards, talking with other witnesses, there was quite a bit of debate about as to exactly where he was hit. Some people thought that he was hit in the chest. Some people thought he was hit in the neck. Some people, like me, thought he was hit in the head. It was all very ambiguous as to exactly where he'd been hit, but everyone that I talked to agreed that as to the direction. And they said, oh, he was hit in the left, on the left side, or he was hit on the left side of the neck. That is what people who were up close were saying. And maybe you're aware of, like, the theories about him being hit in the clavicle. I don't know if you've heard about that, but to me, that kind of, like, that seems fairly plausible given how people were saying he was hit in the chest versus hit in the neck. Like, if you were up front and got the worst view that I could possibly have, then yeah, I could see how someone might actually have seen enough detail to describe that that's where he was hit.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, from the initial, and I ended up being wrong on this. I thought that he had body armor on and he was hit, and it looked like that round skipped upward. It does, even still to this day, when you slow that down. Now there's some problems with that, but when you slow it down, it looks like it's like he's hit here, goes back, and then like his whole body also goes upward. I've confirmed multiple times now that, he wasn't wearing any sort of ballistic protection or anything like that. But even with slow footage, like, it's ambiguous. And part of that reason is with any gunshot, you're talking about an extremely high speed, energetic event. There are things moving faster than any camera, much less our eye can actually, I don't know, kind of process and see what's going on. And then, of course, his shirt did some really weird things with the necklace, which we can talk about later. So he's hit. Now, so you're off to the side. Now, are you far enough off to his right side that you can see behind the table as he goes down?
A little bit, yeah. Like, I don't really at that point, I don't really have much time to take in what's happening, because obviously everyone around me is kind of starting to panic, and people are starting to run, and I realize, oh, I'm in an active shooter situation. This is insane. So no, I was not looking at what happened immediately after. I was more concerned about moving and getting out. However, I would say that with that, I was very focused on what I was hearing, because what I could hear would be what told me if the shooter was going to continue taking shots at the crowd, or, because at that point you don't know, right? Like, in the first couple seconds, like, you don't know if there's going to be follow-up shots.
Sure.
And so I was listening carefully for what's happening around me. Are there any other shots? And so that's one of the reasons that I can confidently say, like, I know that there was exactly one shot, and it's impossible to justify in my mind. Like, you could not tell me that there was a second shot. Okay. Like, I listened for the number of shots, and was very, like, no camera microphone can recreate what your ear actually hears. That's the thing here. Your ears can pick up direction very well. They're designed to do that. And so all of these arguments about, well, I have these microphones and I line them up and I triangulate a position. If you weren't here, if you weren't there, you just really don't have much to say on that, because it was exactly one shot. And I understand that, like, in some positions, you might hear reverb come back that would sound like a second shot, but that's reverb. That's not a second shot. And that's how a person could maybe think that they heard two shots. Where I was, however, I was right next to the building, which is actually an ideal position to not have reverb be an issue in triangulating direction. So it was that's why it was a very clean, just one shot, pop, and it's over. That's what it was.
Well, the other thing that people haven't considered is that audio from that shot was also it was actually put out through the PA system too. Eventually that sound gets to the microphone that Charlie had in his hand, and then it's going to be reamplified through the PA system. So I understand people's confusion, and I'll tell you, even being at UVU, man, that is a auditory nightmare. Like it's weird how sound bounces all over the place. When I was there, they had the water feature going, so it's like you could barely hear each other anywhere when you're even talking up close, because even the sound of that's just bouncing off all the hard surfaces, and it's multifaceted. And so, like you said, I think like if people are saying they heard a second shot, I get it. But here's the thing: I haven't talked to a single. I hear that said on social media. I haven't actually heard a single eyewitness actually say that, and maybe they have, but I haven't heard anyone actually say that. Now, going back to knowing what you know now, given your estimation of distance, like, did it make sense that that's where that shot came from? It was 138 yards away. Like, when you were told the position of Tyler Robinson, did that make sense at all, or what was going on with that?
It lined up with what I'd initially thought as to the direction and approximate distance. Like, by the feel of it, I would have said it was over there. It was kind of elevated a little bit. I actually struggled, like, with the first guy, Zinn. Is that his name? I can't remember the first
Zinn.
guy that
George Zinn.
Yeah, George Zinn. So shortly after I exited the event, we heard that, they had a guy in custody, and that was George Zinn. And they were saying, he was in the crowd, which for me was like, okay, well, it's difficult to believe that there was no commotion, if someone walked in with a firearm and did that, but also it didn't match the direction that I would have heard the sound, because it would have been more in front of me, is where Zinn would have been.
Yeah. So again, a lot of people did think it, I've heard people say this, hey, from the immediate, they thought because George Zinn said he did it, it kind of like, this is the guy. But what you're saying is, like, when you saw that didn't kind of correlate with your brain.
Yeah, I kind of was like, it was ambiguous. Like, I was questioning because of, like, it was what was coming out at the time, right? It was like,
right.
I was questioning, well, did I hear wrong? Is there something that I just missed in terms of observation? And so, like, I was open to that possibility, but it just didn't seem very likely. And I was internally a bit skeptical, even though I was kind of taking things as they happened.
Sure. No. Brick, you got any questions as far as that goes?
No, it's just you talk about the cameras and the limitations of them being able to resolve, like, any projectiles, and just like a lot of that early speculation where people are saying you can track this and it's the projectiles coming from behind. None of that ever made any sense to me, because it's just not something that would very, very rarely ever happen. And the fact that it happened at Butler only occurred because it was in broad daylight with a professional photographer at super fast shutter speed. And even then, it was unlikely.
Well, even then, he was using a shutter speed of 1/8,000 with a professional camera with a large sensor. And then what we still see is a long streak.
Correct. So when people are talking like it's this little dot and follow this dot, it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I understand that people want to think that if you put everybody on a curve, there's going to be some people who think it's really like the CSI things, and you can really freeze frame. You're going to get this information, and you can blow up what an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy takes on its little camera sensor and glean information about bullet trajectory. You're just not going to be able to.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's and all it does is take a quick, I don't know, educate yourself. I ended up, I didn't know anything about cameras or audio or anything before I got into YouTube. And then I just like kind of became a camera nerd. So like I knew none of that stuff made sense to begin with. Tyler, any other details about that day that you think are kind of material to, what's going on?
I mean, if I were to come up with my own conspiracy theory, it would not involve the government. First of all, if I had to guess about like, was there an accomplice, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I probably would say that there might have been someone in the crowd that was aware of the conversation that was happening with Charlie. And this is related to the sound system, by the way, because I am very skeptical that Tyler Robinson would have been able to hear the conversation that was happening, and the timing of the shot with the discussion and the question at the time it kind of lines up too well in my mind.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's possible that just is how it happened, right? Like coincidences can happen, but there's also part of me that's wondering, like, was there someone in the crowd that's just totally unknown still that was in communication with Tyler somehow and signaled, hey, he's asking a question that's, about these topics that you care about. Now's a good time to take your shot. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, look.
Tyler, I got a question for Tyler. Where did you go immediately afterwards? I mean, you mentioned people were running and you were concerned about, some people were starting to run. How far away from the seating area or the standing viewing area did you get? And did you remain there to watch what was unfolding? And if so, what is your interpretation of when the police finally got everything cordoned off and some sort of order was restored? That was because you mentioned you saw somebody go up and steal a hat, or maybe you just saw the video of that.
I saw the video of that. Yeah.
Okay. So how long was it afterwards before, if you were there and you were watching, how long after would you say, like, okay, this is cordoned off now? The police are blocking more people from approaching the tent.
So I didn't stay in the courtyard, so that's not something that I have much to say about. We did exit, and emergency vehicles were arriving like 5 minutes after the shot. Like you had emergency vehicles showing up very quickly, and I'd say like 10 to 15 minutes. It looked like there was a group of guys in body armor and rifles, go in. But I didn't see what happened on the inside. I was outside. I mean, my immediate thought was,
you didn't exit. Did you exit through that tunnel to like the reservoirs they have behind there, or did you go the opposite direction out of the quad?
I went south. There are doors through the main entryway towards the parking lot. So I went towards the parking lot and outside by some grass. If you saw where they had the memorial area set up outside, that's where I waited, kind of like, and just watched with other people. And there was just like, in terms of the emergency response, it was quite massive. I mean, things like this don't happen in Orem, Utah. It's a pretty tame town in terms of crime and whatnot. So like every emergency vehicle in the city and probably a couple cities over just showed up, it seemed like.
Interesting. Is there anything outside of what you were saying, like there could be possibly, other people that were conspirators in the crowd or whatever else. Look, the fact is I think there's a lot of questions that we all have about this. But is there anything that the authorities have said that you find suspect or questionable or anything like that based on your experience there on the ground, I guess?
Based on my experience on the ground, no. The description of where the shooter was, like, lines up perfectly with what I saw and heard. There's not really, I have no questions as to that. It's if you were to, if I were to question anything, it would be more to do with like the situation with Tyler Robinson and his boyfriend and all the, like, some of the messages. Like, I might have questions about that, but like if you believe the direction, and if you believe that, you know, they have DNA evidence and whatnot, it's really hard to say, well, okay, it wasn't Tyler Robinson. Like, everything about that story just makes too much sense. I'm no ballistics expert, so I can't really debate the whole the caliber and whatnot of the weapon. So
Sure.
Out from, as an outsider, like, it all makes sense. I can't really object to anything yet.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure we'll get into it hard and heavy tonight. Everybody keeps talking about it. I've always said that the ballistics are atypical, but not impossible. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And what I do have a problem with when it comes to the ballistics is, you know, you can say, hey, that's not a 30-06. Okay, then what's the alternative? And the alternatives that I've heard so far make less sense, and the odds are less of that being a reality than a 30-06 just having an atypical terminal ballistic result. You know, a different shooter at a different location. I've been there. We can talk about different locations, and we can fly around the 3D model and test some of those out and look at, you know, line of sights and things like that. None of that makes sense to me. The idea that we had this big conspiracy that included some of the most sophisticated and the most sophisticated militaries in the world, and they just happened to plant the wrong caliber rifle.
That makes zero sense.
That makes zero sense whatsoever. You know, if this was going to be a planned conspiracy, like, you would have to go with an AR-15. Like, that just makes the most sense. Like, everybody has one. It's common. Won't question it. The fact that, like, they just threw in a 30-06 into this whole narrative is actually one of the most, I'm like, short of a muzzle loader, like, you couldn't find a different caliber rifle that would raise more questions. Like, where'd this come from? And again, you know, 30-06 used to be one of the most ubiquitous calibers in the United States, period, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. So, like, that's my problem with a lot of this stuff. And there's plenty of cases where a 30-06 has similar ballistic outcomes. I mean, those are facts. You may not like that. You may not want to accept that. And you may not want to accept some of the other facts that we're going to go over tonight. But, you know, we'll get there. Brick, what else?
Well, you know, since you're just mentioning, I'll just give my view on the
Sure.
ballistics. I'm not a ballistics expert. But, you know, you look at things in terms of probability and possibility. And I think it's, you know, it's accurate, given that we don't know the variables, to say that there's a possibility that it did go down as described. For instance, we don't even know what type of bullet type was used yet, you know?
Well,
So
we don't know any of the variables and
correct.
parameters that we would need to know to even make a guess. And the problem
Right.
is, and you said you're not a ballistic expert. Have you ever shot a gun?
Oh yeah.
Do you know someone that has shot a gun?
Yes.
Okay, then, I mean, according to X, you are more than qualified to tell us all about it. I mean, that's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, if I look at it from a, and I hate the binary too. Okay. I hate the binary, because the attack is, you know, that if you think, you know, like, basically people just will say, you're buying into the Fed narrative. Don't believe what the narrative is. Don't believe this. You know, it's like, people think you're either ask and question everything, no matter how outlandish, or you are buying into the narrative. And there are real questions that I have. I'm not going to enjoy by any stretch. It's going to be a hard listen or read for me to read the ballistics report, to hear what happened to somebody that I cared about,
Sure.
that I respected. That's going to be incredibly difficult. I'm not looking forward to that, but I understand that people have questions about it. And, I think Tyler here was talking about the text messages that were sent. I think a lot of people have questions about that as well, because it
Sure.
is a little atypical. And so I'm looking forward to hear, were those phone texts? Were they DMing with some sort of chat program? Was it Discord? Was it WeChat? The way that I read it from the charging document, I kind of interpret it as being phone text messages. I could be wrong. And I would like, when that evidence is revealed, we will know. And it bothers me that so many people want to know now, as if they feel the public has the right to know. All of this evidence has to be out, laid out. The FBI is holding stuff back. They're not, so I don't, I just assign very extremely low possibility or probability to some of the things that are being put out there as being, was it a subsonic palm gun? I'm going to say no to that. I'm 99.99% sure it wasn't a subsonic palm gun from somebody in the front row. So, but I'm not claiming to have absolute knowledge of what happened with the ballistics either.
Folks, what we're going to do is I want to go through and I want to debunk a couple of things that are out there in the zeitgeist that keep getting kind of thrown around. And then we can go through, and there's a bunch of them, right? There's things that we've addressed multiple times, but I want to do it as much as we can to kind of show what the truth is. And that's really what matters. But what I am going to do is give you guys a sneak peek into a video that I'm working on. And I want to show you something brand new that you guys haven't seen before. Now, what we have right here is episode from Candace 277. And I will tell you right now, Nate from VFT, he went through and debunked this very effectively. Look, and Nate is friendly towards Candace. He's offered to be her military advisor, and I wish she would take it. I disagree with Nate on several issues, but we're friends, and that's okay. We can have professional disagreements, and we can talk about some of those things. But I just want you guys to hear this opening to this particular episode, and then we're gonna completely destroy it right out of the box.
What I'm about to tell you guys today is going to positively blow your mind. I just cannot see how this would lead to anything other than a full confession from the government about the military's involvement in his assassination, but I'm just going to deliver the facts and see where they land. Welcome back to Candace.
All right, so she's about to tell you a story that is so compelling and that is so wrought full of evidence that at the end of this, there's no other conclusion that you're going to be able to make other than that the U.S. government is definitely involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And by the way, it's going to be so compelling and so evidentiary that the U.S. government is going to have to come out and admit that they were involved in this conspiracy as well. I'm going to save you guys some other dramatic points of this. And the crazy thing about this whole thing, it is so full of very strategic information operations tactics. And then on top of that, as I'm listening to this video play, at one point she calls Harry, the guy in this, the protagonist. And then like that had some bells and whistles go off in my head. And then I went back and re-listened to it because what I realized is that not only was this story being conveyed, it was actually conveyed perfectly using the hero's journey format. And if you're not familiar with that, it's what all storylines are great stories are going to follow. What that consists of is the ordinary world. All right, this guy starts off as just an ordinary soldier. He has a call to adventure, a challenge disrupts the hero's world. He gets involved with a drug bust operation and is betrayed by his own people. And this often includes some spiritual element here, usually, or a supernatural element. And at the beginning of this, she talks about how she went to mass and she prayed for real evidence. And then she goes home, and just so happens that there's the very first email is this email. And then she calls this guy late at night, and they go through this, and this turns into this Tom Clancy, Jason Bourne craziness. And again, Nate does a great job technically talking about every piece of this as to why it is absolutely ridiculous. But my point here is not only does she use a lot of different tactics that you would use for disinformation, this is not just a story that's been conveyed. This is a story that's been engineered to have the greatest emotional impact on you using a well-known format to deliver the story. I mean, it goes through this almost step by step how you would create the story. But in the end of it, or towards the middle of it, you know, this guy stumbles upon this meeting in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And I'll just play this part right here.
Mountain Division patches.
And
Strikes up a conversation with these young guys, and they tell him, oh, no. The old Joint Task Force 6 is now being continued, and
so he goes to this building and he just stumbles upon this meeting with a bunch of O4s. I'm not even going to take the low-hanging fruit of her calling them E4s, E5s, E6. I don't really care about that. But here's what she says.
Obviously, because then the biggest assassin.
Let me back it up.
I'm going to say allegedly because I wasn't there.
Back it up a little more.
Meeting, and he is kind of even more impressed because many E4s, E5s, E6s, but he just goes, what's going on? He's like, you don't see this unless you're at the Pentagon or you're at the White House. You just don't see this many high up the food chain lieutenant colonels. He's going, man.
It's a joint task force. Like, this is exactly like if I went in there and I didn't see multiple O4s, O5s, O6s, and probably a couple generals, like I would be like, what's going on here? This is weird. All right. And again, this is something she constantly does. She takes these normal things and she throws this air of suspicion onto it because she doesn't understand it, or this isn't normal for her, or whatever else is going on. And this is also why this entire story has to be nonsense, because if a guy was 30 years SF, which I don't believe he was, he would know this. Like, he wouldn't find this odd at all. He would be familiar with SOTFs, Seizure SOTFs, and other task force. And this is why this is pure deep state trash.
This is a pretty important meeting. And he has gray hair. He's got glasses.
All right.
And that's the center of the action, right? He said you could just tell this is the most important person.
All right. So he stumbles in this meeting. How he got into this meeting as a civilian walking into a task force it would never happen. But he sees one guy that is clearly in charge, the highest ranking guy. He's the center of attention.
And he has gray hair. He's got glasses. I believe he said that he's about 5'10". And at this point, he sees that the person that is with him, and he said, certain that the person that is with him is Brian Harpel. Yeah.
All right. So Nate pointed this out. Great. He's like, so before this assassination ever took place, this guy just happens to see this guy standing in front of him, Brian Harpel, and he puts it in the memory bank. And then later on, the assassination happens, and he goes back, that was that guy. That was Brian Harpel, even though, again, we don't even know who Brian Harpel is till at least a week after all this stuff. But again, let's say it's true. All right.
Okay. Oh, it's about to get even more interesting.
It is going to get more interesting.
So, and again, he is saying, I think he is very credible. Okay.
All right. Throughout this thing, she wants to remind you, I'm talking to him 10, 15 times. She talks about the credibility of this guy. He sent her all this stuff. She knows it's legit. He's honest. This guy is his credibility cannot be questioned. He has been on the run his entire life. He has good situational awareness, builds this beautiful story. And I want people to understand.
September 9th.
So she says this earlier on, but I want to remind people, and for those of you watching it for the first time, I want to give you a point of reference of when this is.
Political assassination since JFK happens. Now we're September 9th. He wakes up at around 5:30 a.m. in the morning because he wants to see the sunrise. Now around 7:37 a.m. when he enters the new or temporary JTF headquarters.
All right. So this is at 8 a.m. ish in Arizona, Fort Huachuca. All right. Now, before November, Arizona is 2 hours ahead of Dallas Fort Worth. Just want you to remember that. Also, earlier on, she says something about Dan Flood. She's like, hey, Dan Flood couldn't have been there because he was on the Asia tour with Charlie. Well, guess who also was on the Asia tour with Charlie? Brian Harpole. Now, with that being said, this is September 9th. With that being said, all of them got back late night, September 7th. So I also I'll show you the flight itinerary. They returned from Asia, or at least Brian did. He got into LAX at the 11 p.m. West Coast time on September 7th. He ends up getting back to Dallas Fort Worth at 4 or 5 a.m. In Central Time. But right now, forget about that for a second. So the whole point here is that she said Dan Flood couldn't have been here because he was on the Asia tour. All right. Now we still have time. We could still shoehorn Brian Harpole into this narrative, I guess. But I do have a flight itinerary that shows that he flew from LAX because I called him and I asked him, hey, where were you on September 9th? And we had a conversation. He started sending me real receipts. It's called real evidence, not my sources tell me. All right. So now it's 8 a.m. in Arizona, which makes it 10 a.m. in Dallas Fort Worth. And Brian Harpole is supposedly in Arizona at 10 a.m. Dallas Fort Worth time. Now it's a 2.5 hour flight, and that's just flight time. It's 2.5 hour flight from Arizona to Dallas Fort Worth. So if Brian Harpole didn't stay there any longer, and the first thing he did was step out of the door, jump on an airplane, and fly back to Dallas Fort Worth, the soonest that he could be off that plane is 12:30 a.m. Central Time. But we know that's not how it works. All right. He's on Fort Huachuca. He's going to have to go to Tucson and some other things. And this is September 9th. And the other thing I would say is, if Brian Harpole is in on this whole thing, why didn't he just fly directly from Fort Huachuca to UVU? He could take one of these SAM flights that you guys hear about from Baron Coleman and many other people. All right, now what I'm getting ready to show you is really important here. This is his flight itinerary and his ticket purchase for September 9th, flying from Dallas Fort Worth to Salt Lake City. All right, you can see his departure time is 1:42 p.m. All right, there is no way on earth that he could have gotten back to Dallas Fort Worth. Again, it's not just getting back at one, if he flew from 12:30, got there right at 12:30 or 1 o'clock, it's 2.5 to 3 hours. I don't know, I guess depending on how the wind blows, right? This whole thing, he was in Dallas Fort Worth. And by the way, he has multiple witnesses. His fiance drove him to the airport that morning. So we know that Brian Harpole was in Dallas, Texas, where he lives, or right outside of Dallas, Texas, where he lives on September 9th. And the entire narrative that we have from Candace is that this is a government conspiracy to kill Charlie Kirk based on some random person spotting Brian Harpole in this meeting. This whole thing is utter nonsense. It is just complete and utter trash. And you can go through this whole thing and talk about and point out why everything that is being conveyed is just a lie. And this is what I said, and this is one of the things that I said in the last video that I think is worth playing real quick. Naive. I mean, just like legitimate source. I think she's naive. I mean, just like she said, she's ignorant of the military and how things work with that. We're going to talk more about the French Foreign Legion, National Guard, and some of the other things that she is alleging that just defy common sense altogether. So again, I don't doubt that she's being fed this information. I just think that she is easily tricked and is too eager to put out this type of stuff. And I think people are taking advantage of that fact.
I think.
All right. So, that's at a minimum. That's being super gracious to Candace. And I'll be honest with you, I put that together and was bringing that up before I realized how engineered that this video actually was and the entire narrative being put out. This is done at least by her producers. All right. And if they follow this format, I am seriously questioning her producers. This is an engineered piece of information for sure.
She's not even particularly attentive to details that are factual in nature. I mean, I could point out the post that she put out on X about the initial Egyptian jet leaving Provo after the assassination contained on her own post contained information that countermanded the time she was saying. She was off by 6 hours. So it's not just, I agree with you that she could be being fed false information, but even when she has the facts in her hand, she can misinterpret them. So there's at least that one instance of hard data just being not interpreted correctly. And so there's maybe you want to call it the sloppiness. I don't know what you want to call it, but in addition to things being, sent her way that may not be accurate, when she does have something that is accurate, she's, not always 100% vetting it properly.
No, 100%. Tyler, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I can hardly follow the story. It was kind of, so contrived.
Well, and that's part of the issue too. It's like, okay, we went from it's just TPUSA that had this conspiracy. Now we continue to add layers and people on, and then it went to the French, and then it's Israel, and somewhere in between, and now we have the military. Which again, one of the things that really irritates me is that more than once she has suggested that the military is in on this whole thing. As a matter of fact, in this clip right here, which I'm going to go ahead and finish playing this little piece, and then we'll get to some other conspiracies that we can kind of debunk.
I think there was
nothing about the military.
National Guard regiments that were there. Were some National Guard regiments that were there. Some French Foreign Legionnaires that were there.
All right. So now we're saying that the U.S. Again, she knows nothing about the military. Okay, when you're talking about these things, you don't know about them. That's a real problem, right? So I guess these assassins, they're assassins 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Yeah, I mean, the idea that the National Guard is in on this is just utterly bonkers and just dumb. Real quick,
Gary, this is one of the things really that really bothers me about her style is that I don't mind people asking questions.
I agree.
But to level accusations without any proof, without anything to back it up, especially accusations that are this serious, without really anything concrete besides I got an email from a guy who remembers Brian. Yeah, it rubs me the wrong way. And so I'm not somebody that says, by all means, if you want to ask questions about it, I understand that. I got questions as well. But
I'm with you.
The accusations without proof, without anything that makes it even plausible is really difficult for me. Really.
And not realizing the damage that she's doing to real people. Like when you're accusing these people, when you're accusing the people behind TPUSA of murdering Charlie and conspiring to kill him and all these things, like these people are getting death threats and their reputations are tarnished in a way about something that not only is there no evidence for, like there's no way that they were even involved. Like you can't tell me that it just doesn't, it's just so bizarre. It's so dumb. And the problem is that this stopped being an investigation a really long time ago, and it's turned into a smear campaign, which is really, it's a personal Salem witch trial 2.0 by a scorned woman. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
And my my distaste for her reasoning is not limited to this case. In fact, it started way before this. When I first heard that she feels that the United States space program, moon landings, or as she put it, fake NG. I'm not going to say the word, but she's basically a moon landing denier. And I am not a moon landing denier. I believe that we went there. I believe we landed on the moon. People can attack me for that all they want. I just don't see any way that Russia and China would have been going along with our lies about the moon for all these years. It's a totally separate thing. So
it is a separate thing.
Her attack on that is just like, that's really when I started. It's really when I started to lose respect for her as a valuable source of truthful information. Is when she started denying the moon landing.
That's part of the problem with a lot of the. I mean, I kind of stopped paying attention, like in the past month, to all the stuff that has been added to the story. Like, it's one thing to have a theory and stick with it, right? Like, oh, it was this group, they did it. You have one person that you're blaming, but as soon as you start adding more, you start running into the same problems as with the moon landing, right? Where you have multiple countries that are adversaries that have every reason to throw each other under the bus, and now they're suddenly working together. Like, how? Like, Israel and Egypt? Explain this to me. Like, why would they work together on a project?
Yeah, no, a lot of it. Look, I do think I'll back that up just a little bit. All right, I do think Egypt and Israel do work on things together. They actually coordinate quite a bit. With that being said, you can take elements of this that are true, and that's what she does. And even throughout that story, what she did, look, there's a technique, folks. And what she does at the beginning of this video is she starts getting you to nod your head in affirmation. All right, so this guy was part of this drug bust in the 90s. And by the way, you remember that, the Iran-Contra affair, and we had all this stuff going on with narcotics, and she shows a bunch of videos from the Bush administration. You're like, yep, that's true. That's true. And then she goes on. So we're already nodding along. All right. We're feeling good. Like, yep, this is true information. It's been verified. And then she gets to a point to where she talks about, hey, this guy sent me receipts that he was actually at the hotel. Also, it is proof and evidence of a non-material part of the story. That's another thing that is a well-known tactic in disinformation operations, right? So she's getting you not along. Oh, she has proof of that. Who cares if he stayed at the freaking Best Western outside of Fort Huachuca? Like, you can have a month's worth of receipts there. What we need is the evidence that this meeting took place, and it didn't, because what she claims cannot happen and did not happen and would not have happened. But I digress. We're going to move on to another conspiracy or element of this that I've heard a lot about, and I understand where the confusion comes from. All right, so here's a picture that's being pushed around, and what we have right here is, well, let me back this up. One of the things that's being said is like, hey, this is all a big lie because the drones in particular. There were drones at UVU because Frank Turek talked about it on the way there, that Charlie showed him drone footage from UVU. And the problem with that is it's this picture. Now, this picture was on the Charlie's Instagram. All right. And I understand why people think this is drone footage. And I understand why, when looking at it on Charlie's front phone, and this was posted to his Instagram, they've removed it. But you can still find it, by the way. But even this has been pushed around like, here's proof that there was drone footage. All right, so let's play this a little bit. And I want to show you a couple things that we have going on here. So there's that footage. And I want us to be aware. All right, so this is from Tyler Robinson's position. I'm just giving you a reference point. So I want us to look at this right here. Look at this lady's face over here. That's relevant. And I also want us to see what's going on here. And I also want you to pay attention to her face, but also this little, I don't know, this reinforcement portion in the concrete itself. And yeah, right there in that spot. All right. Now I want you guys to look at this guy. All right. And we're going to zoom in on him just a little bit. And what I want you to notice is that he has an Insta360 camera right there. He's clearly a photographer or something. He's got things you can see as a camera and other things going on there. And I want us to see this whole thing. Now, what I did was I actually put this into the 3D footage. And normally I'm running around this thing in 50 millimeter lens. I looked at this picture and just seeing that it's clearly a wide angle lens, right? We see distortion.
Absolutely.
We see distortion going around, which, by the way, you don't typically fly a drone. And what I assumed, given the angle of this, that this was a 10 millimeter, around a 10 millimeter, or maybe even a little bit more, like an 8 millimeter lens. Well, what's cool about the 3D model that I have is I can go in here, and I can go up and I can pick the lens, the field of view that I want. And all I did was put it in the right position. And then what I did was I picked 10 millimeter lens. And I want you to see what's going on here. And I show some back and forth so you can kind of see what's happening. All right. So now I've kind of zoomed in just a little bit, and I'm showing you the perspective of what we have here. And you can see me moving around the model just a little bit, trying to line up the correct position, all of those things. That looks pretty good. Look what we have. It's almost exact. Now, the only difference in the 3D model is you don't get that distortion around the edges that you get with the fish angle or fisheye lens of such a wide angle. But this is in the exact position that photographer was, with a very similar field of view, focal length. And this is what we're getting. So the idea that, hey, Brian Harpel was lying, there was drones up before it, and you can kind of see right here, this is where he was. Let me zoom out of this a little bit so you can see his, oops, wrong one.
I do have one of those Insta360 cameras, and you're absolutely right. You get distortion at the wide field of view.
Absolutely. This is the one right here. Let me just show you guys we're in the right spot. There we go. Push him up a little bit. The other one. All right. You can see he's right there. Right there is that pillar that we see there. All right. So the idea that this was drone footage, it's not. There was never a drone flown around the UVU campus. And I know this because I tried to fly a drone. UVU believes they have authority over their airspace. They don't. And you could fight with them on that and all that. But again, TPUSA, if they go there and say, hey, we want to fly drones, and UVU says no, like, they're not going to fight them on it. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, well, you know, the FAA regulates your airspace. You don't. Like, they're hosting this event at that location. And quite frankly, if UVU said, you know what, cancel it, you're out of here, like, it would never escalate that point, but you know what I mean. So again, the idea that there was drones flown beforehand, there is no evidence of that. I've talked to multiple eyewitnesses. Not a single one has ever said that there was a drone there. So at least that portion of that misinformation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it, is not true. The last thing I want to talk about is the text messages prior to, like, the night before. They were saying, hey, you know what? He was getting text messages that people were going to kill him. And Frank Turk put that out. And let's see what actually happened. And this is Jesus Enrique.
Which brings us to a question that
the body language guy. He just put out this video, and I hadn't seen this, and I'm glad he caught this.
Have been asked nonstop in the past couple of days. Frank Turek said in September that he had a conversation with Charlie a few months ago about some violent act in the news, and that conversation derived to Charlie saying the words, "I know they want me dead."
All right. The problem with this is that everybody that showed that video edited out a few months ago. So they were trying to trick you, and they were trying to form a narrative.
Erica, on the other hand, just recently said on the Glenn Beck podcast that she was in possession of Charlie's phone, and she was confirming that the day before he was murdered, he didn't text anything along the lines of, I am going to be murdered. They're going to come in after me. Someone's going to kill me. So people are up in arms saying that, oh, see, one of them is lying. And not exactly, because Turek was very clear that his conversation was a few months ago. And that was in September. Erica was clear that on September, like as you had this conversation in September, a few months ago would be like, I don't know, June or July. Erica was clear that on September 9th, Charlie had not texted anything of the sort. Are you starting to realize that the people who make these claims online, both the ones who spread them and the ones who repeat them, doesn't bother to, one, to watch the original clips, and two, to have the minimum critical thinking to realize that there's an obvious temporal separation between what both statements refer to, even if the content is similar? And the answer is no, of course. It's much easier to go with the text snippets that confirm their biases, because the other option takes time and effort. That's boring. Even worse, the other option would make them look like fools who have been duped into believing things, so their brain fires up this defense mechanism to say, no, we can't possibly be wrong. That is not happening. Which I am going to say it again, as I've said in many videos. It is understandable that we don't trust the FBI.
Agreed.
Or any three-letter agency, or any government for that matter. But that doesn't mean that every single thing they do or say, you're going to believe the opposite. It's like they say, if you believe every single conspiracy, then you are low IQ. If you don't believe any conspiracy, then you are low IQ as well.
Which we've been saying on this channel for a really long time. So hopefully that clears some things up. Yeah, you guys got anything to add to any of that information there?
Nope.
All right. Well, this will be fun. All right. We're going to open up to some questions. Any of the discrepancies that have been said by TPUSA, any conspiracies, any of it, I'm happy to talk about it. If I have an explanation, I'll give it, or I think, and I'll do my best to like distinguish when I'm, speculating but I do have a lot of videos and photos and things like that where I have debunked some of these things, so we can get into it. So anyways, we'll open up the floor now to some questions. We will prioritize some super chats. We already have some, and we will start going through those. Thank you, sir. And again, folks, if you want to support us, we do offer memberships. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go follow Brick Suit on X. Brick, you got any other socials that you use a lot? You do have a YouTube channel?
No, really, X is my main thing, and it's brick_suit, so it's got the little dash in between it. I'm also on Instagram, but X is my main platform.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I believe I put that down in the description below, his social media link. Tyler, besides what's your X handle? You kind of came on at last minute, so I didn't get a chance to. I will go back, folks. If you're watching this and it's already posted, I'm going to go back and put the link to his X account in the page in the description below. So make sure you can follow him as well.
Yeah, it's just Tyler McSci-Fi. So like a science fiction novel, just Tyler MC Sci-Fi. And that's it.
Awesome. Nope. We'll put that down in the description below. So go give him a follow as well. Glad there are men like Gary helping us in this fight. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm glad there are folks like Brick and Tyler that are out there also just giving the truth. And here's a crazy thing that I've seen so many times, folks, is these eyewitnesses come out and they give their testimony of what they experienced. And then because it doesn't confirm people's biases, they start getting attacked. Have you experienced that, Tyler, where people are attacking you or?
I mean,
really?
Not too much yet.
It's coming.
Is this the first interview that you've done?
No, I did. Okay, I did go on some of the some of the news networks like immediately following, like the day of and the day after. So like I had one with CNN and MSNBC, and I don't even remember all of them, but like I had like 5 different ones or something. And yeah, like immediately after I did get some hate mail in my inbox, but it disappeared like the day, like within a week I wasn't getting anything. So
Well, I hope people are reasonable and don't start attacking you and all the things. But every single time that I've seen an eyewitness give an interview, and I've never seen one confirm any of the other alternative theories out there, they usually get attacked. So hopefully that won't happen to you. And folks, if you're even thinking about or tempted to do anything crazy like that, don't. It's just silly. Yeah, he said, I don't know, no, so I just guess. That's, yeah. Project Constitution chopped the video of Frank Turk to corroborate Candace, but cut out the part where he said it was months ago. It's an army of liars. Project Constitution is one of the biggest grifters and liars and disinformation operatives on the planet. He constantly puts false titles on there. He says the videos, because he knows most people are just going to read the description. They're not going to actually watch the video. He put out one video where he said 5 eyewitnesses were interviewed, and they all said that the shooter came from Charlie's right. I went through the video. Not a matter of fact, all of them, I think only 3 out of the 5 actually gave a reference, but one said, hey, I was facing Charlie. That person was to Charlie's left. He said, I think the shots came from my left. Like it, and then the other one was on the other side of Charlie to Charlie's right, facing Charlie this way. And he said, hey, the shots came to my right. So the point here is, and I've called him out many times, one of the biggest disinformation artists on the planet out there. So,
and the scale of Candace's protracted drip has, on the platform of X, which I'm on a lot. I can't say for any, what's going on other platforms, but it's given rise to this sub economy of people who are feeding into what she's doing, and not just with posts, but with spaces and narrative support and things like that, or just reposting what she's doing. And frankly, to me, while I can maybe, as you did, give some grace to Candace and saying that she might just be getting bad information, I believe that the second tier are really, they're in it for monetization for some of them, not all of them, but for some of them, it really has the hallmarks of posting really just to get monetization and eyeballs on your post, knowing in the case of Project Constitution how incredibly hard it is for any post to receive a community note and become demonetized when we're talking about something that's a matter of opinion like this, where it's just very, very, very difficult to get that done.
Yeah, no, she clearly has an orbit of proxies that literally either just reposting her or posting the exact same thing that she's saying. And look, Coach Colin is a great example of this guy. That guy is someone that all he does is do reaction videos to Candace's videos in the affirmative. And I mean, he's getting hundreds of thousands of views on these silly videos. And all he does is cheerlead and simp for the entire time. I mean, it's embarrassing, but there's lots of folks out there. There's Ryan Mata. There's, of course, Ian Carroll. There's Meg, the crazy village lady, Project Constitution, and several more that are riding her coattails. And they are all working in concert with one another. It's all coordinated, and they're putting out that information. And they've been doing it since about week 1.5 or so after Charlie was murdered. It's a psyop. And I think it's a deep state. I think it's a deep state coordinated psyop, 100%.
I wouldn't. I will grant that that's a possibility, but I think it's also very possible that they might not even be in direct contact with each other. So like that's just the natural thing to do if you want to make money on X.
I've seen in multiple videos where she shouts them out specifically.
Absolutely.
She shouts out Ryan Mata. She shouts out Meg, the village crazy lady. Of course, Ian Carroll has co-hosted for her before.
Correct. But I think to push back a little bit on what you're saying, and it's absolutely all enough. I mean, that's just going to reinforce their behavior and get more people to continue to do that. So, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that I could also see if they just independently decide to do this because that's how they're going to get traction. That's their come up. It's like I know accounts when Johnny Depp and the Amber Heard trial was going to go on, was happening, and there were accounts that just went just ballistic in terms of, pardon the use of that phrase, but just really expanded their viewership because that's all they covered. And I think that there's a segment of people out there in social media who are looking, what can I hitch my wagon to next that will result in me getting my account to the next level? And I think there's some of that behavior coming. Some of what I've seen can be explained by that without having to say, hey, Ian's talking to Ryan, even though maybe they are, but without saying that certain accounts are all in cahoots together to support.
All I want to know, Brick, is how much did Israel pay you? I'm just joking. No.
Well, if I had $1 for every time somebody said that I've been paid $7,000, I would have at least $100.
First of all, let's dispel that myth. It's not $7,000. It's actually 7,000 in shekels, which comes out to 28.50 or so USD. All right, so let's understand where that is. No, look. I'll grant you that. I do think I'm going to stick with the, again, complete speculation on my part. Not all. I have seen some coordination, but I do think it's a little bit more coordinated than you're giving them credit for. But I understand where you're coming from, and it's a reasonable position to take, without a doubt. Candace implying she has connection to defense. She's trying to get cameras removed from the courtroom, overwhelming evidence, and Tyler exposes her grift. I think that's correct. Folks, if you haven't watched my interview with Andrea Burkhart, she's a criminal defense attorney. We went through the entire case. She went through all the evidence, and she talks about what could be fabricated and what couldn't, and why it couldn't, given the access and the capabilities of a defense attorney. And she also explains some of the other things that, the ex-lawyers, the people on X that, they wake up one day, they're ballistic experts, they're body language experts, and they're lawyers all in one. They just wake up and that happens. But she goes through and explains all of those things. And it was really educational for me as well. So if you haven't watched that, you need to go watch it. I think it was one of the most informative and educational podcasts we've ever done. It would be great if you get Turk on, given how close he was to everything. I would, love to interview Turk.
Is he subject to the gag order?
No. So the only people, and this is one of the things that Andrea laid out, that gag order, the only thing the gag order covers is the attorneys. Everybody else can speak out at any point in time that they want, including the parents. So the parents aren't under a gag order. So if the parents thought that their son was not guilty, they could be in front of a camera right now and be telling everybody, hey, look, my son is being railroaded, and everything that's in the charging documents that they say we said, that we turned him in, that we confirmed that he confessed to us, everything in here, all that's a lie. And they're sending my son, he's a patsy, or, he's not guilty. They could be doing that, and they're not. And let me tell you something.
It's my recollection of that gag order hearing that besides the attorneys and the court staff and law enforcement, that potential witnesses could be subject to it, but they first had to be notified by the attorneys that they were subject to the gag rule. So that's where I was wondering if Frank Turk had been notified that he's subject to the gag rule. I know that in the hearing it didn't apply to him because he wasn't in the class of people who were automatically included. I was wondering if he was added because he might be a potential witness.
According to Andrea, she said that the only people covered, given the language of that order, it was only the attorneys, and we're not aware of any other secondary. Now, these other people may have been notified separately or something like that. But again, I keep going back to the fact that as a parent, like if that is true, if they're trying to frame my son, there's nothing that would stop me from getting in front of a camera. But
I mean, it's also the culture here in Utah. Like if something like if something like that happens to your family, you stick up for them if you think that they need your support. Like that's what we do in Utah. So the fact that they so quickly said, yeah, he's guilty and we're turning him in, indicates that they're pretty they're very certain about his guilt. His parents are very certain about his guilt. You don't do that as a parent if you're not.
Well, and the other thing I've heard is that, and I don't know if this is true. This is again hearsay. So take it what it's worth. Like that, they have money, so they could have gotten him some lawyers and things like that. But he ended up having to go with some public defenders. So, take that for what that's worth. But again, if it was my son, I would definitely be going after him. And yeah, like in Utah, I mean, LDS have always been super, super accepting of the U.S. government, right? That's how it's worked in Utah.
Not exactly.
No. We had to put up that front for a bit, but
yeah.
It's becoming a little bit easier now to admit that we're not too pleased with federal lands being, or what, number 2 in the United States or something. It's like Nevada's the only state that has it worse than us in terms of federal lands.
Yeah. Jenga 333 says the Discord chat where Tyler and others were talking about this, one guy reminded him to wait for the transgender comment before he took the shot. Yeah, look, there's some, like, I've seen some of these fake ones too that ended up being fake that were passed around. And that's the other thing that gets my hackles up a little bit is like there was so much even AI videos floating around initially. Like the entire sphere of this was so flooded with bad information to just poison the well right at the beginning. It seemed inorganic to me right off the bat. And even that, I don't even want to get into that, but
that was one of the things that bothered me, frankly, about like the first 2 days where we had the transcripts of the text messages.
Right.
Because everybody was assuming what they were reading in the article was like the actual text messages themselves.
Right.
But I interpreted it as being a transcription of what somebody else read about the text messages. So you were seeing them in the news and you were seeing them in print in an article, but that was not like on a sheet that was released by law enforcement. That was somebody who was talking to the cameras and saying, said this, and then it was put in there, and people were saying you would never put a period, you would never capitalize this, and you weren't looking at the actual text messages themselves, which is why that's one of the things I really, I'm looking forward to seeing in the trial is an explanation of where they came from and when.
Well, Andrea actually explained that too. She said you would never see the actual text messages in the charging documents. It's a summary. And by the way, it is just a transcript, but it's also a summary of what is in that text is relevant. The judge has to read through all this information to make a decision, and he just wants to see what's relevant. So if there's half that sentence that isn't relevant to what's going on here, they just take that out. And the charging documents aren't the evidence. It's a description of the evidence. But she said the problem is that if you put all of this description of this evidence in here, or really any of it, and then come to find out it was manufactured in the trial, like that taints everything. I don't know if it'll be tossed, but the point is like, oh, well, come to find out right here where it says the parents turned him in, and where the parents saying that he suggested to them that he was the shooter, and then you get them on the stand and they're like, no, I never said that. Yeah, it's probably going to end up getting tossed because they are going to be brought up there, and they're going to have to testify in front of the prosecution, in front of the criminal defense. So again, folks, go watch that. I mean, she just does.
And by tossed, I meant there specifically that the evidence will be tossed.
Yes,
not the case. And obviously, it would be a different case if the evidence were fabricated on purpose and there was actual prosecutorial malfeasance. That would be a different thing.
100%, and it would obviously taint the entire case, at least in the public perspective, for sure.
It would ruin the jury if you were to start releasing evidence, like actual evidence. So they can't.
Well,
they can't present actual evidence until, like, they're supposed to keep the evidence under lock and key until it's to be presented to the public, which is in the trial.
You're 100% right. But even if the jury is like, okay, the jury is presented with evidence that contradicts the original charging documents, or they find exculpatory information from witnesses and things like that, like this becomes a real problem. And by the way, folks, one of the things that Andrea pointed out that I'd never thought about, like this was just enough evidence that the prosecution had at the time that they felt like they could charge Tyler with these immediate things to, number one, get him booked, get him off the street and in prison. It does not mean, number one, she said the investigation was still going on. There's a ton more evidence that that will continue to support this. They have enough to support this already. But on top of that, they may even charge additional charges. And then, of course, they're still doing an investigation to this very day. People were saying, oh, it was a 33-hour investigation that was over. No, it wasn't a 33-hour investigation and it was over. The investigation is still going on. They have, even by the time they got to the first hearing, they had so much evidence that the prosecution or the criminal defense said it was voluminous, and they needed another 2 months just to go through the evidence they had. And what Andrea was basically saying was like, there's going to be more and more evidence as they continue to investigate this, and they're going to. So the investigation is still going on. It wasn't over in 33 hours, and that was interesting to me. I knew it wasn't over in 33 hours, but I didn't realize that they would still be investigating to now, or maybe I just hadn't thought about it, but it was good to hear. MTX 485 says 1990 El Chapo was a nobody, it's tardation. He's referencing what was going on in that original video where she kind of lays the groundwork of this Jason Bourne guy that was on this task force for. Have you watched the Turkey Tom video? One of Tyler and Lance's friends came forward and talked about the toxic relationship. He said Tyler always called Lance my love. He said Tyler was Lance's keeper. Yeah, folks, if you haven't watched the Turkey Tom video, have you two watched it? Have you watched it, Tyler?
I've seen it.
Tyler?
No, but I am aware of people saying, like, I've heard snippets of people saying, like, this is actually how Tyler talked. Like, he had a very eccentric personality in terms of his vocabulary.
Interesting. Video of Harpole in Asia and Charlie's channel 2 months ago. Video named Charlie's Kirk's last big trip, 533 in. My opinion, amassing a large punitive and compensatory award in the Macron case, her in-laws is where their wealth is. They're not paying if she loses. I don't think they would have to, right? They're going to be going after her assets. I don't know how tied in her assets are with her husband's, and if there's different, legal steps they've taken to separate that. I'm sure they have.
The Macron case is actually pretty interesting because this is another part of her pattern of ignoring facts. And if you read that, if you read the complaint, one of the things that Macron's alleged is that they provided her with proof to the contrary of what she was saying about Brigitte. And then she continued to go forward with her story. And that's where people are saying she's in legal jeopardy because, after receiving that proof, she continued on with her statements. And, I've even seen people say that she's doing this with Charlie as a means to cement her defense in the Macron case, that she's primarily for entertainment. It's an interesting theory. I don't know if I ascribe to it, but I've heard it said.
That sounds like some ex-lawyer speak right there. Yeah, I have heard a couple of people say, and have heard lawyers say that people talking about the case and familiar with the case, that they were kind of on Candace's side until they started reading through that case, and then they realized how strong it actually is. And so that's another. I would like to get another lawyer on here that maybe specializes in defamation, maybe go through that case specifically, just so that we're aware, because I think that is a look. I'll be honest with you. When she started this whole thing against Brigitte Macron, I didn't look into it. I watched like a couple of sound bites of her talking about it. I thought it was hilarious, and I hoped it was true. I still kind of do. That being said, this is a foreign leader, and there's really like, who cares? There's no like real people getting hurt. But when you're making the accusations that she's making now, just normal people that don't have security, that are just normal people that still have a life to live, and they have to face their kids, they have to face their neighbors under the dispersion of that they're possibly involved in Charlie Kirk's murder. It's disgusting and despicable with zero evidence.
The one guy in the soccer team wearing the hoodie.
Yeah. Or
anybody wearing maroon.
Yeah, anyone wearing maroon that day. Like, the lack of logic that she uses with some of these things is dumbfounding. I used to have a lot of respect for Candace, liked her a lot. The more I watch these videos, I just think there's very little gray matter between her ears. Like, she is, I don't think she's very smart at all, to be honest. She knows how to talk really well. But once you start hearing her think out loud, it gets a little crazy. Tuna Fish says, my opinion, we already covered that one. Speaking of dummies, CJ Correnti gifted 10 Paramount Tactical memberships. Hey, thank you, CJ. We were just using that 3D model. I put in the work to go get it. We had the drone fly. CJ Correnti put in a lot of time and money making sure that those 3D additions, the tent and everything else, was perfect. He had his engineers do all that stuff, hundreds of man hours on that. So thank you, CJ. Did TR assemble the rifle at shooter position? If so, how does that work from a precision perspective and still being able to take the shot accurately? I'm glad you brought this up. This is one of the things that I wanted to discuss. What I believe took place was, and I can't do this on a live stream. I still need to do it. If I grab any gun parts or anything like that, they'll shut this off. So I'm not going to do that. Right over there, I have a barreled action, and that barreled action is just a bolt. The bolt is just a barrel and the action itself. All right, it takes two screws, your action screws, that connect it to a stock or a chassis. What happens with that is again, you can have your scope on top. All right, you can remove the stock, you can remove the barreled action, and folks, it's especially 140 yards. If I take that off, put it back on, even if I took the optic off, if it's a good optic with a good mount, and I torqued it down well, and I put it back on in the exact same spot, it's still going to hit a target at 140 yards. 140 yards is not a long shot. There's nothing sophisticated about it. And here's the other part of this too, is look, he either missed about 10 inches high or about 10 inches low. He was either aiming for the head. I think he was aiming for the chest, and it went high. That's what I think. So it was off a little bit, one way or the other. He may have not taken in the distance. Also, the declination angle, that it was a 9.1 degree angle from that position to Charlie's neck. That would play a role in that. So, which would make it shoot high, by the way. If he was calculating for 140 yards, but he didn't take in the declination angle. So no, there's nothing crazy about that. I could take one of these guns, zero it, take it out of the stock, put it back in, and I'd still hit a target at 140 yards. No question about it. What's your take on the TPUSA live stream being postponed until after Erica and Candace meet in person tomorrow?
I didn't hear they're meeting in person.
They are. It was released a little bit ago.
Okay, I missed that.
I don't know about the whole thing being postponed. There is or was a guest supposed to be on their live stream tomorrow. He's a very handsome guy. I don't know what's going on with that. I got to make a phone call after this live stream, which that person was actually texting me during this. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. If I get an update on that information, I'll give it to you. Brick is correct. As per Andrea, who covered the court hearing, all witnesses that will be testifying are subject to the gag order. That is not what she said. I'm just telling you that's not what she said on my, I mean, I could scrub through and try to find it, but she did.
The actual, when this gag order came out, I know I looked at the judge saying it. And it's not just the witness. You have to be notified that you are a witness, a potential witness, and applies to you. So it's not the case that anybody who was there that applies to you globally. But if either the prosecution or the defense contacts you and advises you that you are subject to the gag order then applies to you, as was originally explained by the judge in that hearing.
And I also think, I believe she said this, they updated it because there were some questions about it, and there was another judgment on the gag order. I don't know. Go watch the video I just put out the other day.
Since I'm late to this, they're meeting in private. Is Candace coming to Arizona?
I don't know what I can share on that, so I'm just not going to that. I'm not going to. What
right. She had 11-day notice, and apparently it was problematic to do that with 11-day notice.
Here's what I'll say on that is that there was a lot of back and forth, and options were given by one side. You know what? I'm just going to stop there. There was a lot of back and forth, and
all right, no problem.
I could share with you probably offline. Take on Erica meeting Candy in private. Think it's stupid, weak, will backfire, won't stop the conspirators, and Candy can lie about it. I think it needs to happen. I think that TPUSA is ill-advised to stay quiet. I think it was ill-advised to stay quiet as long as they did. I think they should have started pushing back more forcefully earlier on. But I think like me, like I just got to a point where I was fed up, and I made my first debunking Candace video last week somewhere. And this is still before anybody was saying anything really about it. Now it seems like the tide has shifted. I genuinely thought that I was going to lose half my followers posting that video. And I didn't think, I mean, I'm glad, I'm thankful for that, but I didn't care. Like I just was, it was so obvious to me as I started watching her videos, like what was going on and how this was an engineered disinfo operation. I think it's more sophisticated than people are giving it credit for. I don't know if it's Candace or she's just being given this information. I don't know if her producers are involved in it, but I do think it is more nefarious than what we're giving credit for. Erica, Candace meeting privately in person tomorrow. If Candace and her sycophants are so convinced TR isn't the guy, why aren't they pushing for dismissal? He's an innocent man about to get death penalty. How can they stand for injustice? They are actually. I've seen them all over Twitter that they're saying that. They're saying that he's an innocent man that's trying to kill this innocent man and everything else.
He's a patsy, right?
Yeah,
they claim he's a patsy without any proof.
This is Luigi Mangione just on the right. Like, that's how I'm seeing it. It's just not as extreme, like, because at least people are gonna, I don't know, on the left with Luigi, people are like fanboying over him, whereas with Candace, at least it's like, oh well, he's a patsy. We're not celebrating what happened to Charlie, but you know, they are effectively they could be helping him get away. You know, if they can get a mistrial, that might be the play here. If they legitimately think that he didn't do it.
I was thinking that too. I'll just say, talking with Andrew, that's another thing she brought up. She's like, look, you know, the idea that with what's being put out there now, she's like, yeah, if they continue to acquiesce to Candace and just started giving out evidence like she wants and thinks that she has the authority to demand, that would be a real problem. But she's like, all the hearsay and everything that's being said on social media that people are concerned about, you know, tainting the jury pool, she's like, that's probably not real. So I was a little bit comforted by that. You know, we get, all of us that are on X and social media, like we get very myopic and like, oh, we think the whole world thinks this. Like 90% of Americans probably aren't.
Right. What I'm saying is that the goal is to goad, goad and like get that kind of a response. Like obviously, if you don't have the evidence, just spouting stuff isn't going to change anything. What you're trying to do is get people who have information to disclose it and hurt their own case.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Look, I think there are people that, whether they believe it or just saying it, but they're definitely saying that, he's innocent. And, going back to the conspiracy though, like if he's the patsy and it's the United States, Israel, and France that are framing this patsy, just like we said, it was ridiculous that they would plant a 30-06. It would also be ridiculous that we had those level of sophisticated actors and he walked away alive. Like this guy would be dead. If he was dead or found, that he unalived himself with 3 shots to the back of the head, like Gary would be on board with the conspiracy, be all over it. Love it. All right. It's right up my alley. But like, that's not what we see. And to me, that just kind of proves it further. What were you going to say, Brick?
No, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, it's like, we saw him in a gas station driving back down south. Was it Beaver or Cedar City? I can't remember which Maverick it was at. But on the way back to St. George, he stopped for gas, and like you said, if he was found in a ditch halfway between Provo and St. George, that'd be a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. And for everybody saying that he's innocent, why was he 3.5 hours away? Why was he at that event to begin with? I know some people are still saying that, he was never on UVU campus. Then what was he doing there? What was he doing in Orem to begin with? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Andrea was correct when she was on your show, but the judge did clarify the most recent court hearing this week who the gag order applies to. Gotcha. Just wanted to say thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. Just want to say thank you for asking the logical questions surrounding this and using common sense. This situation is so horrific. Just for the clarity on my last comment, Andrea talked again about the gag order after your video with her. Gotcha. Okay. So it's been updated, it's changed. Got it. Handsome guest speaker, I would pay to be a fly in the room to watch you grill CO. Any possibility of that? No. And look, no, there's no possibility of that. Candace is welcome on my show. Anybody, I've opened up this platform to anybody. Like, if you don't believe what I believe, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not going to automatically, basically allege that you have some nefarious intent. I think there's some people out there that believe some of these things. The more that I talk to them, I realize they believe things that aren't true. It's kind of like what Reagan said. It's not that, our Democrats are ignorant. It's just they know so much that isn't so. It's the same thing with this, is like you find out basically what people are doing is people they trust, like Candace and others, have made statements as fact, and it's not factual. It's easily proven wrong. So, and these little things start to add up a lot, right? It's like, oh, this piece and this piece and this piece, it muddies the waters to the point where this person is so deceived by these small things that now they don't believe any of it. And I get it. But, again, anybody that wants to discuss this in a friendly
and some of those things, Gary, could be true.
Yeah.
But they're not relevant.
100%.
And that's another problem. Is that people are in this, they're looking at something like, okay, this is true. Like you mentioned about this guy may have been at the Best Western at the, outside the military base in Tucson. Not relevant to whether or not Gary Harpole was there. So it doesn't matter. So just because some things presented are factual doesn't mean that everything presented is factual. And people are just, I don't want to say it's a weakness of how people think, but I mean, I think that some people may not be quite as rigorous in how they're evaluating the information and whether or not it applies to the central tenets of the discussion.
They're way more easily persuaded than they should be. We'll say it like that. And then it's like, what I also find ironic is we'll put out information and they'll be like, oh, give me the source for that. Give me the information for that. Prove that to me. And we usually try to, anything we say, we provide evidence like we did tonight, but they won't provide the same rigorous standard to Candace and these other people because, they have a certain confirmation bias that they are operating on. I don't know if they don't realize it or not, or just don't care. And that's another thing too, is like there's a lot of people that are very vested in this investigation. They've never once read the charging documents. You're very vested in this information, in this investigation, but you've never, like, you won't even listen to eyewitnesses, or if you do have an eyewitness or anybody else, and they don't confirm what you want, then they're going to, try to undermine that with and say, oh, well, this person has an agenda. Well, no, maybe it's you that has an agenda, and you're putting your head in the sand unless it's information that you prefer. You're cherry picking, and that just that's not wise. We'll
Which is not to say that I think that everybody who supports Candace's viewpoint is making these logical errors. I think there are just some people just really trust her, and I think that trust is being misplaced.
I 100% agree. I think there are people that are operating in good faith, and look, we are very focused on this, so we're all into it. And a lot of people, they touch and go. They hear a little piece and they go, and then they form a conclusion based on a little piece of information. It doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't make them dumb. It's just they're not paying as much as attention, and that's fine. And I also think that's one of the things that these people rely on, right? They know that people aren't going to click the article or watch the video. They just go with the headline, and so that's all they need, and it confirms their biases. They move on. They're like, yep, they said five eyewitnesses confirmed that the shooter was in a different location. I like that. So I'm going to go find something else that interests me. That's just how that whole thing works. All right, folks, we'll get to a few of the live chats, and we'll try to address any questions that you guys have. Candace was giddy saying TPUSA ratings dropped. Not an option is because of Candace. Not an option is because of Candace. Not sure exactly what you're saying there. Did you all see the video of when he arrived at the court this last time? Yes, I did.
What happened there? I didn't see this the most recent video.
I mean, I saw the video where he arrived. I don't know what she's referencing specifically, but yeah.
I didn't like the New York Post, I believe, article on the lip reader.
I agree.
That kind of bothered me. I just felt it was like way, presented as fact, and we've got to believe that their expert is 100% correct when it's not an absolute science. And it just really, it was presented as being accurate, and so many people on the right, even, who were basically, if you want to say, like, maybe someone in opposition to Candace went with it. I didn't put that out there because I just felt like this is kind of ridiculous. I'm not going to believe it.
I didn't post it either for that, and I saw some accounts close to this posting that, and I was just like, oh man, that's not smart. Number one, that can blow up in your face. Number two, I agree with you. First of all, it's from a side profile. I don't even know if I don't know anything about lip reading, but I just thought it was not smart to perpetuate. And again, everybody suffers from confirmation bias. We've all retweeted or reposted stuff that we're like, oh, this looks legit. We didn't come to find out it was completely false. And you got to be smarter about that. Even Coach Collins is calling to detain them all and sort it out. Yeah, that's not how our justice system works. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea with glory in his bosom that was made for you and me. As I died to make you holy, so you all could be free. The God is marching home. Oops. Candace is completely different in interviews. She crumbled on CNN recently, making a fool out of herself, of Russell Brand. Yeah, that CNN interview, which I don't like that reporter, by the way. The fact that Candace didn't realize, and that was right about the time I started watching her videos, and so it made more sense. But I don't think Candace is familiar with what's in the charging documents either. What I noticed when she was presenting the information in the charging documents, it was summarized by her producers, and it intentionally omitted some really important pieces of information. So it's just some talking points and summarization of this. I don't think she, basically that person was like, hey, Candace kept referencing the text messages as information coming from the discourse chat,
Discord chat. Yeah.
Discord chat, and the CNN report is like, you realize those are text messages, right? And it says it in the charging documents, by the way. She's like, I understood it as those being a Discord chat. She's like, no, it was a text message. So yeah, I don't know how familiar she is with some of this information. Take that for what it is.
The comment there though is directionally correct. I mean, she did like a Jubilee debate with some other people. You know, it's the one where you've got the kind of bull in the ring and people come up and everybody on the outside waves the little flags. I don't think she performs as well direct 1v1 adversarial discussion as she does when she has complete control of her narrative.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, look, there's very few people like Charlie Kirk that could think on their feet the way that he did and was able to. So I think that's true of most people, but that's probably especially true with Candace. It's more than this stuff. She's saying our government is illegitimate. We occupied the nation. Our military occupied global nations. She's telling people not to vote and the military to not follow orders. And this is where, when she's getting to all this stuff and the way that she's undermining the Trump administration, and also, by the way, completely deconstructing everything that Charlie worked for, getting a revival of the conservative movement, especially amongst the youth, she is destroying all of that. And, I said it before, I'll say it again, Charlie was attributed with over 2.5 million votes. We beat Kamala Harris by 2.3 million. And I think that the attribution of votes is probably a little low. People have said in the comments, well, how do you think that Candace could actually affect an election? She's got 7.5 million followers and probably influences more people than you realize. She could sway the numbers for sure. And I think the more this narrative gets out there, those independent voters, they can just hear about some of this supposed corruption that's going on with the Trump administration and, tying the Trump administration and our U.S. military into the assassination of Kirk. And that's enough. That's enough to go vote in Biden 2.0. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those narratives that is designed to attract casual conservatives, right? Like it's not the blatant in your face, oh, you're a conservative, you're wrong. It's designed to validate your concerns about big government and overreach and getting involved in international squabbles that we don't want to be involved in. Like all of these things, conservatives that, just your regular run-of-the-mill conservatives care about intensely. And they, like you're saying, they can just see it one time and go, oh, that's alarming. That's seriously alarming. And I need to change my voting habits to address that.
Yeah. Or to punish them if they think it's true. I think there's probably 20%, maybe even a little bit more of the population that is always got one leg over the fence, that's easily persuadable. It doesn't take much. And that small amount can change elections by a lot.
Sure.
I mean,
that's actually one of the things that I really, I'm really focused on when it comes to election systems, is recognizing that is actually a feature of our system that we have, that it is very sensitive to small changes in population support. So if you have a close election one way, it just takes 1% to go completely the other way. And so we're always on a knife's edge.
Yeah. Especially in toss-up states. I mean, I think
which is why it really bothers me, her whole message, like, I don't care about your midterms. Well, it's not it's everybody's midterms. And I don't care if you're conservative, or if you're right of conservative, or if you're a libertarian, or even if you're a liberal. I mean, you've got to be concerned about the midterms, because if we take our eye off the ball there, they're going to do an end run on us.
I agree.
And Charlie's Turning Point did a lot of things. Okay, so I'm not going to say that this is their only focus, but their voter outreach and their focus on swing states and their focus on ballot tracking and getting people to get involved and realize that these are important issues for you to pay attention to, because if you don't, they're still going to apply to you. It's just that you will have had no input on them, and it may be an imposition that you don't like. It may be the other side of the political spectrum limiting your freedoms, taking something away from you, telling you that you can't do this. So
allowing mass immigration all over again.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And it's we're seeing increasing signs that we're not able to really assimilate the people that we do have, let alone any more people in.
I agree. Yeah, what you just said too kind of indicates how unprincipled Candace most likely always was. If suddenly all the things that you espouse as your guiding principles, conservative movement, personal liberty, making sure that we are a nation with borders, all of these things, like suddenly there's this one issue that you're pissed about and you're like, screw all this other, none of this stuff other matters. All we need to do is focus on that. Like, I don't care. I don't care if, you told me, guess what? The U.S. government definitely did what she alleges. Okay, that's fine. We need to hold them accountable. And by the way, what's as important over here too is making sure that we're a nation with borders, making sure that we have immigration policy that benefits the United States and its citizens, and not foreign nations and foreign people that are going to come in here and completely change the demographic and the principles and our traditions and everything else that we hold sacred here in America. Like, that would still be a principle of mine. And for her to just say, you know what, none of that stuff really ever mattered. This is the only thing that matters right now. Like, that tells me a lot about who she is and her motives, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, the other question that I have is like, what is the actual motive here or end game of the people that she's blaming? Like, what do they gain? I can look back on like 9/11, for example, and see that like, oh, well, I understand that people can justify that it justifies government expansion into our lives. Like, there are people that would want that. But you can also just as easily point out that these things, disasters happen, crises happen, and you can always exploit them. So like, even if you don't cause, even if the people benefiting from it don't cause it, they can benefit from it in post by taking advantage of the fallout.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, look,
just blaming people that could possibly benefit doesn't even work, even if you can find someone that benefits. Yeah. I don't even see someone who benefits here. Like, who does benefit other than the left?
The left benefits. But here's the other thing too, what she's putting out. The other thing I want us to stay focused on is what she is doing. A lot of people benefit. The left benefits. People that want chaos in our country benefit. Foreign nations are benefiting. Anytime that we can take an already eroded trust of the American government and make it much, much worse, that is going to benefit many other countries. The other people that benefit are, look, I have a real
so
problem.
So far, she's benefited. She's had a lot of benefits so far.
She's benefiting a lot. We have taken our eye off the ball of what one of the main focuses of TPUSA up to the time that Charlie died was the fact that, look, we have a trans ideology movement across this country that is pushing mental illness and turning it into law in this country and policies within states and local governments as well. And we've completely taken our eye off that. As a matter of fact, the crazy thing to me now is that all these conservatives that were against this ideology are sitting on X and other platforms, and they're defending, like, no, it's not the trans. Like, everything points to the trans and the trans movement and LGBTQ and all the issues that we have. Charlie Kirk was, just like Frank said, going back months ago, Charlie Kirk was getting thousands of death threats. None of them were coming from Israel or France, I guarantee you. They were coming from the left. They were coming from the LGBTQ community and the things that he was speaking out about. He didn't have security because he was worried about for years and years and years. He didn't have security because he was worried about Israel killing him or the French Foreign Legion or the U.S. National Guard. Like, that's not who he was worried about. They have been trying to kill him and threatening to kill him for a really long time. So thank you, Digital Soldier. I appreciate that. Cryptic says, I think it's funny how Candace and Ian are circling back now saying they don't believe Tyler didn't do it, but that they just don't think he did it alone. Yeah, well,
That's a hedge.
Yeah, that's not what they were saying for a really long time. And I have noticed that Ian is changing his narrative on that quite a bit.
And they'll claim they're correct on that because, as you said, the investigation is still ongoing. And I think it's to me, it's definitely a possibility that there are people in a chat room somewhere who had advanced knowledge that this was going to happen. And if that's the case, I absolutely want them found and brought to justice. But that doesn't mean, to me, that they had that they facilitated it or planned it, and that I still think that as I see it, I still think Tyler is the main actor. But
yeah, look, again, I've said from the beginning too, I think the other thing that we need to look into, not only do I think that Lance Twiggs, I think that those text messages were formed in the way that they were to basically make it look like Lance didn't know what was going on. I think that's part of why they were so weird. But as far as them changing the narrative, look, I'm going to keep this little treasure for a really long time, and that is when she says, after this video, there's only really one conclusion anyone can ever really come to, and that's that.
He says that he then fails at finding the
That's not the one. This clip right here.
What I'm about to tell you guys today is going to positively blow your mind. I just cannot see how this would lead to anything other than a full confession from the government about the military's involvement in his assassination. But I'm just going.
Again, and there's many other things that she said that are pretty definitive about the way that she thinks this whole thing turned out. Candace had no clue how easy it was to access the roof that TR shot from until early December, and probably still doesn't know. Pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. We'll hit like 5 more questions real quick in the live chat, and then we will conclude, folks. Candace. Bro's got major Candace derangement syndrome. I didn't even bring her up until about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to the point that I had enough where I think I genuinely think she's a real threat to this country. And you can say whatever derangement syndrome that you want. I mean, Candace has had TPUSA and Erica Kirk syndrome for 3 months now. She's made
she really elevated it too. Yeah, she really elevated it when she said they're a godforsaken organization. Take back your donations, request refunds. And when she started actively campaigning for, kneecapping them financially, she took it to another level. And so I think she brought it to some place that really demanded attention at that point. And so it's not to say that there's some sort of derangement syndrome. It's like, she upped it to the point where it demanded attention. I agree.
And to me, the thing is like, it was just so shocking to me that so many people were buying into it so hard. And then there really has been like this, again, you've been covering conservative politics for a long time, Brick. I have too. And I've had the left attack me. I've never seen the level of, I don't know, the vitriol, I mean, it's crazy the way that people are being attacked by the Candace followers. I've never seen anything like it. And it's
some of them.
Sure,
there are a lot of Candace followers.
Fair enough.
The people who are doing those attacks are the minority of the Candace followers.
Sure. I will tell you, the same good thing goes with the left, right? And I've been speaking out on the left, and I've been able to talk about things and not get nearly the attacks. And the other thing too is like I've never seen what looks like bot activity from the left the way that I've seen. There's always been leftist bots, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there. But like immediately when I see, oh, you're just a Zionist, you're $7,000, hope that's great. You know, you're a Fed. You go to these accounts, they were created in September and they have like 5 followers, and it's like it's weird. Again, to me, it's very obvious that this is
Gary, you've been watching too many Candace videos.
I probably have.
I've heard you drop weird maybe like 5 times in this stream. Maybe it's part of your everyday parlance before, but maybe it's prepped in as a result of watching. So just, it's like every time you say that, the hairs on my neck are just like, that is such, I just got to tell Gary about it. So,
if I start saying feels and vibes, I'm going to give you a shot collar remote, and just every time I say something like that, you hit the button. If you know and keep quiet, you're an accomplice, an accessory to the crime. Yeah, and that's where I got in this, where I was just like, you know what, I feel. Look, and this was a talk that I had with my wife over a month ago. And I was like, look, I think I need to start going after Candace. Like, I just can't stay quiet on this. She's like, look, and we've had weird things happen. We've had things happen. We've had things happen up at her shop. I'm going to completely extricate that word from my vocabulary. We've had things happen at her shop that have concerned us. That it was, a result of things going on social media. And she was like, you know what? You shouldn't. Just stay out of it. Don't do it. And I was like, man, I just can't. And I got to the point, I was like, hey, look, I'm posting the Candace debunk video, and we're going hard on this. I'm just not going to stay quiet on it anymore. And, so that's where we're at.
Well, I admire your courage for that. Somebody like me, I just have a social media account. It doesn't affect me in terms of a business. So I think somebody like you taking a principled stand like that is, orders of magnitude above what I'm doing.
Well, thank you. I think everybody should, again, like we can't, if you think something's wrong, like we got to speak out more. And what I will say is we are seeing, I wasn't the only one. I think we had all come to, there were several people out there that had enough, and it was clear. And right about the time that, and I'm not claiming responsibility for that or anything else. I'm just saying it was a lot of people at the same time. I do hope that some people saw that video and saw some of the things I was saying on X, and I hope that they were inspired to not stay quiet, because a lot of people are doing it now. And it wasn't just me. It was quite a few people around the same time. I don't remember how bad things were 1 year ago. I do remember the media telling me how bad it was, and seeing pictures of 20-year-old men filing into the country through borders, and made me want to puke. Yeah. I mean, that's a fact. That was definitely going on. All right, folks, I think we are going to wrap things up there. Tyler, number one, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think it's super important that, I hope other people that were eyewitnesses, especially if they saw something odd, especially if they heard a different gunshot. I want to hear all those things. So, I hope other people out there that were there and, share their story of what's going on, that will help confirm or deny what we're seeing in these. I'm always suspect of the government and their narrative, but I mean, at the end of the day, you got to go with logic and evidence, and you can't just say, oh, no, this is true, and then without providing some sort of alternative. Anything else you want to say? Word to the people out there, Tyler. What do you got?
Well, I got nothing. I mean, the main thing that I guess with this whole thing with Charlie that got me was I wanted to ask him a question. I wanted to have a discussion, and, it is kind of sad to see the way of discussion, what Charlie promoted, having civil discussions and debates, kind of under attack from both the left and the right effectively right now.
Yeah. And right here, we got a link over in the chat. Go follow Tyler.
Thanks.
Just make sure you put up a link for Brick Suit as well. But you can literally go to X, type in Brick Suit. His thing's going to come up. Brick, what do you got for the people out there? Final words.
Well, I got to find out what the structure is of this meeting between Erica and Candace. If I have a preference, I want it to work out. I'd like something to come to some sort of amicable cessation of just sniping at each other. Bad choice of words there. Sorry. Because I don't think that's serving anybody. I think the important thing here is our not just honoring Charlie and remembering him, but continuing on with the work that he and the Turning Point organization did. And they can't lose sight of that. And it's an incredibly potent weapon for the conservative side of politics, because we didn't use it for so long. And the Democrats and the liberals were much better at ballot tracking and ballot harvesting and getting their voter turnout. It's only recently that we've really kind of dipped our toe into that pool. And I agree with you that the efforts of Turning Point and similar voter outreach projects were absolutely instrumental in winning all of the swing states and the popular vote. And to throw all that away because you have fatigue about a trial and you have fatigue about a subject matter is the wrong thing for us to do. We should redouble our efforts. We should continue to support Turning Point. We've got a country to save. We've got the blueprint. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I would also say, one of the thing that made Turning Point and Charlie so admired was his ability to stand up with courage and speak truth, right? He didn't just sit back and that's what conservatives had done for a really long time. Like, we sat around in our own echo chambers and like, hey, this is really ruining the country. And yeah, trans ideology is wrong. It was Charlie and a couple other people that were up there on the podium and debating these things and saying, you know what, it's okay to say that this is immoral. It's wrong. It's non-biblical. And, I'm going to talk about this and get out there in front of people and stand for what's right. Just like Charlie said, the truth isn't always popular, but it's worth it. So I encourage people to be courageous like Charlie. If you believe whatever it is you believe, get out there and say it with some courage and conviction.
It's not just that what he was saying was that he was afraid to speak the truth. He was also willing to entertain opposing viewpoints.
100%.
And that is another central tenet of his. And I'm going to try and paraphrase it, and I may get it wrong, but basically on many occasions he said, when people stop talking, that's when bad things start happening.
I agree. So
we've got to keep talking, not just within our side of the aisle, but with the other side of the aisle as well. And I believe that the more that dialogue that goes forth, the more people will come to see things the way Turning Point sees them.
Yeah. And when that does happen, it gives people a clear choice. Hey, which one of these makes the most sense? Which one of these is the most compelling? We've all been blind to things, right? And we hear more information like, you know what, they're actually kind of right on this point, and you can change up. Yeah. Anyways, listen, thank you both for coming on. Brick, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope we do this again sometime. Both of you stay there. Don't go anywhere. And everybody out in the chat, number one, thank you for supporting everything we do. Thank you for joining us and engaging with us. We really appreciate it. We got a lot more information coming for you pretty soon. I got a bunch of more podcasts that I'll be posting, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all those things. We really appreciate you guys out there. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.